morning and welcome to the Thai PBS World. Imagine if you were asked, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And what do you want to become? What would be your answers? Perhaps it sounds very simple, but turned out to be quite challenging because it's about your life. And these are part of the questions in Designing Life program at Stanford University. And it turns out to be one of the most popular courses at the university.
Being a designer into our future, maybe we could create something that was really magical.
Professor Bill Burnett, founder and co-author of Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life, was in Bangkok recently to run a keynote speech and a mini workshop.
Or maybe there are things you were
He was invited by RISE, regional corporate innovation powerhouse based in Southeast Asia.
When they grow up, and it turns out less than 20%.
Bill Burnett co-authored the book with Dev Evans. They initiated a program to help students create the life they want to live. The course turns out to be more popular than computer science. The design program does not start from a grand plan, but begin with different small ideas and put emphasis on experiment or prototype of each idea. In an interview with Professor Burnett, I asked him to elaborate more why the program does not necessarily start with finding passion.
If you have a passion, if you've discovered something very early in your life that you want to do, and you're still doing it, no problem. That's excellent. And it turns out, if you look at the research, passions most frequently emerge in the arts early. So if you knew you wanted to be a dancer or a singer or a writer, that might have been an early passion that does get realized later in life. But the research also says that 8 out of 10 people have no identifiable passion. And so we call it a dysfunctional belief in the book because it's like, well, 8 out of 10 people can't answer the question. And then inside the question, do you have a passion? You feel like, well, if I don't have one, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe everyone else has one. But it's not true. 8 out of 10 people cannot identify a single passion for their life or their career. So we just don't like the question because it leaves so many people feeling like they've done something, there's something wrong, and there's nothing wrong.
In Thailand, the buzzword is very much in vogue right now. It's about design thinking.
Yes.
What's the similarities between design thinking and designing your life? Do you think it's the same concept?
Well, absolutely. I mean, so when Dave and I first got together, we were thinking about how to help our students because they were confused and they weren't sure how to get a job and they weren't sure about it. And so originally we were just thinking, well, we'll just do a small seminar on finding a job. But then it turned into more and more. And what happened is I realized, because my main role as a professor, as an adjunct professor, is to teach design thinking to students and to produce designers. My students work at Apple and Facebook and LinkedIn and one of my students, Evan Spiegel, started Snapchat. So my students go out and they work in all the companies using design thinking. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, we could use design thinking for life design. It's the same principles. A prototype is how we build our way forward. Brainstorming is Odyssey plans. We use mind mapping in the book. We use many design. I want to make sure the book always has design techniques in it. So when you finish the class, you're better at having ideas. You're better at brainstorming. You're better at coming up with alternatives. And the same thing is true in life design. You need lots of alternatives to try. And so we found that every step in design thinking had a parallel step in life design.
And you have dashboard having love, play, work and health. Why are these 4 types to be concluded in or to be components of designing life?
You know, as I said before in my talk, at Stanford, we are a research school, right? A research university. So I'm not allowed to just make up 4 things and pretend that they're real. So we were looking at the research of Martin Seligman, who's one of the famous, one of the founders of positive psychology. And he and his other psychologists have studied what makes a person's life. Well, first they started with just happiness. And then they realized, well, happiness wasn't enough because you need achievement, and you need relationships, you need love, and you need other things. So he has a much more complicated scale of what it takes to have a good a life that's thriving. He calls it flourishing. I think the book is called Flourish. So we took that research and we just made it simpler. It said, well, it's really 4 things, because health is health underlies everything. You have to be mentally healthy and physically healthy to succeed. Then work, because that's what everybody worries about, and play, because we're naturally designed for play. And then love is about relationships, not romantic relationships, but all kind of love. Your children, your partners, what you do in your community. Positive psychologists say if you have those 4 things in your life, you will report your life as happy and purposeful. And so we use that research to find the 4 things.
Obviously, you have done the project of designing your life for quite some time,
Yeah.
but in the age of disruption, everything is disrupted. The structure of organization has to be re-engineered or
Yeah.
totally changed or
Right.
transformed. How does designing your life fit in with the age of disruption?
Well, I think it's actually even more important to take a design approach to the future, because you're right, the future is uncertain. The future of jobs are just going to change when AI and robotics and automation, are more fully integrated into our work, and so many jobs will disappear and new jobs will emerge. So, if you want to be resilient and you want to have a good future, you can't stay stuck in your current thinking, right? Because the future will change. You have no choice. The future is going to change. But if you take a design approach to the future and you say, okay, as things change, I'm going to try new prototypes. I'm going to try new experiences. And probably you'll find that, I look at the future, it's like one way is that maybe it's disruption. But another way of thinking about it is, hey, there may be a job 10 years from now that doesn't even exist today that I could do that'll be even more fun than the job I have. When I graduated from Stanford as an undergraduate, many, many years ago, as a young engineer, we just do our design on a drafting table. We would draw the drawings by hand. Nowadays, nobody draws drawings by hand, but it's more fun to draw in the computer because now I can see the whole object in 3 dimensions, whereas before it was very slow. So the job of being a draftsman is gone, but the new job is so much more interesting. And don't you hope that in 10 years that you'll have a job that's even more interesting than the one you have now?
So it must be something to do with imagination, what we see ourselves in the future, 5 years,
Yeah.
10 years, and
Exactly.
what we'd like to design for our life.
It's imagination and it's curiosity. We say the number 1 mindset of thinking like a designer is to be curious. So one way of thinking about the future is, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to, I'm not sure it's going to be good, I don't know. And another way would be, oh, let's be curious. Let's see what's going to happen. And talk to people. Because there's people who are already a little bit farther into the future than you. Maybe they're already doing more things or different things than you're doing. If you talk to them, you can get a little bit of an experience of what it might be like in the future, because they're already there. I use this quote a lot. The science fiction writer William Gibson has a famous quote. He says, the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. Mm-hmm. In other words, some people are already living in the future, some people are still living here, and some people are trying to live in the past. If we get curious and talk to the people who are more future thinking, then we can see where we fit.
By talking to somebody that we'd like to be in the future, do you mean that talking to experts, guru in that particular subject, or what are particular group of people that we have to talk to?
Well, when we think about design thinking and we talk about doing our empathy, right? Empathy for the problem, we say there's 2 groups you want to talk to. You want to talk to experts, gurus, and thought leaders, because they can download very quickly a whole vision of the future. But you also want to talk to what we call extreme users, people who are already living in the future and people who don't like the future at all. Because when we talk to people who are very opposite, then we learn more quickly. The people in the middle, they'll just go along with whatever happens. So you want to talk to thought leaders and extreme users. And that might give you some ideas about where you fit in that future.
What do you think is the most difficult aspect for people not to achieve in designing their life? What is the most difficult part?
Well, we all get stuck, right? We get stuck on something. We have an idea, but we don't know how to do it, or we think our friends are better than us because we see them on Facebook and we see them on Instagram, and they seem like they're having a better life than us, and so we get stuck. And there's lots of different ways we talk about in the book that when people get stuck, how to get unstuck. But you know, I think it all comes down to a very simple thing of sometimes people are just afraid to change. You know, it's even if you don't like your life right now, thinking about changing is sometimes too scary. And so you'll stay with something even if it's not good, versus maybe try something that would be a little bit risky but might be better, because you don't know, right? And so that's the other reason you want to take small changes, because it lowers your sense of fear and it lowers the risk. I think people are afraid to try new things. It's very natural.
Do you mean people feel too comfortable in their comfort zone? That's why they are...
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they're in their comfort zone. Sometimes they're in a miserable zone, but they don't want to change either because it's too scary. But the number one, and when I talk to people about the book, they say, you know, when I learned how to reframe my problems and think of them a different way, all of a sudden I wasn't afraid anymore to try new things. So I think once you adopt the mindsets of a designer, the thinking like a designer, being curious, radical collaboration with people, reframing problems, once you start thinking that way, you realize, oh, I don't have to be afraid. I can try lots of different things. And most of the people in the world are very friendly, and they'll help me.
And how can designing your life be applied to Thai society and Thai people? Tomorrow I have more details on this. Please stay tuned with the Thai PBS World. And this is all from Thai PBS World tonight.